And I now call on Senator McGahon. 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Last Kirloch. Minister, thanks for taking this commencement debate today. I'm sure we'll all agree that the issue of our time is the energy transition necessary to balance climate change, sea level rise, and the pace of change required to reach net zero by 2050. And for political leaders who are continuing to legislating for these changes, we must maintain people's political support and the populist support at every stage, and show them that this transition will actually mean jobs, it will actually mean opportunities with green tech, green economy, everything like that. And I think direct air capture is an example of this. Everything that's happened in Ukraine this year has also shown us how harsh our world is, and it's revealed a lot of our energy vulnerabilities as well. And our geographical position on the periphery of Europe and our wind resources means that we could actually deliver where the European power market is failing. And Europe is now a price taker for hydrocarbon fuels, and it depends on parties outside of the Union for energy security. And that's going to remain the same for the foreseeable future. So as we migrate to carbon neutrality, the future means carbon dioxide will become the next globally traded commodity. And we are ploughing into a future in which this new commodity will significantly influence the prices of our livestock, gasoline, transportation, and our electricity networks. And this commodity is already included in the operating expenses of nearly all European businesses. The relative price of carbon dioxide and its disposal could give nation states and their corporations a very competitive edge. And Europe and Ireland, I believe, are lagging behind its main trading partners, which are the USA, the UK and Norway, in regulatory regimes to support industries that can benefit from carbon offsets. So, for example, the USA actively supports carbon capture storage, direct air capture and carbon neutral fuels. And these technologies are energy intensive, they need innovation, technology improvements and political buy-in to scale and reduce costs. But those technologies could also allow Europe to control its carbon refining capacity. And carbon removal technology needs support through regulation and incentives to enable early investment. In the same way that allowed our wind and solar energy to grow and reach a stage where government support is no longer needed, carbon management could be one of the keys to securing our future and a much more green and sustainable way of life. So, Minister, I'm here today to ask, what are our plans to capture this opportunity in Ireland? What is needed and what we need to do? And I really have, I suppose, three key asks about this, Minister. And I'd be very interested to have your views as the Government Minister and thus the views of the Government. So, number one, the only way to compensate for fossil fuel is the use of permanent disposal of CO2. Do we have an entire certification process that recognises and considers life cycle analysis and permanent removal of CO2 technologies? How do we ensure and realise that not all CO2 is equal and that the only way to compensate for fossil fuel use is the permanent disposal of CO2? So, number two, do we support first-of-a-kind facilities and technologies? Investors need certainty, scalability, administrative ease, distribution of costs and public acceptance to attractive investment. Business models must encourage investors to take on the risk of first-kind carbon removal technologies. So are there any plans within the government for carbon price subsidies, such as the 45Q in the United States, that creates financeable revenue streams and de-risk investor sentiments? And that critical area requires a lot of integration into the European Union and Irish climate policies. And number three, what is our policy for integrating carbon removal into compliance markets? Are carbon credits from carbon removal technologies able to operate competitively in Europe's regulatory and voluntary carbon markets today? For instance, as it currently stands, the EU emissions trading scheme, the ETS, does not incentivise greenhouse gas removals at all. So is it something that the government should go to the European Union and say we should be looking at the ETS as an appropriate place for new innovative technologies to be able to trade their carbon credits?
Thank you very much, Senator. And Minister, you have 4 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator McGahon. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this question on the role of direct air capture. DAC, direct air capture of CO2, involves a system where air from the atmosphere flows over an absorbent material that selectively removes the CO2. CO2 is then released in a concentrated stream for disposal or else for reuse. The absorbent material is regenerated and the CO2 depleted air is returned to the atmosphere. DAC differs from carbon capture and storage, which seeks to capture CO2 from point sources such as flue gases from large industrial processes, and this is followed by transportation by pipeline and then injection into geologically secure storage. DAC is still in its infancy, and it is currently categorised as having a technology readiness level of 6 on a scale of 1 to 9. meaning that it's still in the prototype phase, not ready for full commercial deployment yet. According to the International Energy Agency, there are 18 DAC plants operating worldwide, and that they're capturing almost 0.01 megatons of CO2 per year. A 1 megaton CO2 per year capture plant is in advanced development in the United States. DAC plants are currently very expensive and they're energy intensive. A significant factor in their deployment will be a plentiful and economic supply of renewable energy. Pioneering countries in DAC development are those with such resources, and these would include countries like Iceland that has abundant geothermal and hydro resources. The next Climate Action Plan, which is the Climate Action Plan 2023, is currently under development. It will provide an update on the progress being made in meeting Ireland's national climate objective, and it will seek to identify any challenges or obstacles in relation to this progress. This plan will build on the actions from the 2021 Climate Action Plan, such as commitments to increasing the proportion of renewable electricity, including increased targets for offshore wind energy, and to enable modal shifts such as extra walking, cycling and public transport journeys per day by 2030, and supporting the take-up of electric vehicles to reach almost 1 million vehicles by 2030. It will increase our supply of skills and resource capacity to make retrofitting more affordable through the National Retrofit Plan, and it will provide for faster uptake of carbon-neutral heating and increased electrification of high-temperature heating in our enterprise sector, as well as the phasing out of high global warming potential F-gases. It will reduce our emissions within the agriculture sector while supporting world-class food production through an innovation and science-based approach. This includes a reduction in chemical nitrogen and more targeted use of fertiliser, while maintaining our position as global leader in grass growth through multi-species swards. All of these measures and more will be required by Ireland as it seeks to reduce by 51% its greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 relative to 2018 levels, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. The Climate Action Plan 21, in Action 124, does make provision for development of carbon capture and storage as opposed to DAC by 2030. Its development too is challenging, but it could remove further emissions from the system. We will therefore develop a policy framework and roadmap for the provision of CCS. However, direct air capture in its current configuration does not feature as an option in the plan. Yet in due course, as we progress in reducing our emissions, increasing our supply of renewables, and DAC becomes cost competitive and technologically more advanced, it's going to become an option for inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, and you have a minute to respond.
No, that's excellent, Minister, because you see the whole point I'm bringing this today is to get the government thinking about it, and I'm pleased to see that we're willing to do that. So you've come to this House today to say, look, it's not accessible as of today, but as we progress along our climate action targets for the rest of the decade towards, it will become more feasible. And I think what is really important today is, similar to our hydrogen strategy, if the government start planning for it now, so that when it does become more financially viable, and then we can go for it. So it's not that we're, so if we do the work now, that when it does become viable, we have a plan in place, we just have to roll it out, and it can become one of the many, many tools that we are using as a government to reach our 2030 and our 2050 targets. So I am really pleased to hear that the government are certainly open to examining it. I think that is really, really useful. And like I said, I think it does have an important role to play, and we see what they're doing in the USA, the United Kingdom and Norway with it. And certainly it could be a very useful weapon in our arsenal to really hit our targets in 2030. And I'm very pleased with your response today, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Central Minister. You have the final minute.
So there are three key responses. In terms of mitigation for climate change, there are three key things going on. There's the switch to renewable energies, wind power and solar power, they're replacing fossil fuels. Then you have energy efficiency, for example, retrofitting homes. And finally, you've got things that remove carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere. Now, those things all have different prices per tonne, and you line them up. But you don't just go with the one measure that has the best answer. You have to have an array of things, it's like a balanced diet. You need an approach with all of those different things taking place. And those prices, even if it is very expensive per tonne to use one of these technologies, we expect that will change over time. And there will be a requirement for the removal of CO2. That we believe that renewable energy and energy efficiency measures like insulation will not be enough on their own. There's a lot of technologies right now that are not deployed or that are cost prohibitive. They're very likely to be there. I went to visit a geothermal energy research centre in TUD yesterday, and I think that really is going to be a big future for Ireland as well. So we're not going to write off any of these technologies because right now they're too expensive. We will keep them under review, and I expect there will be room both for CCS and for DAC in the future. Thank you.